64 BC, the powder coin money was taken out of the hands of changers, early bankers, by Julius Caesar so that he could mint the coins, making money plentiful. He was assassinated, which opened back up the door for the changers to take back over coin and money, enforcing increased taxes, which resulted in people losing lands and homes. In 30 AD, Jesus threw out money changers for violating the sanctity of God's house by running a monopoly on the half shekel that Jews used to pay temple tax. They called for his death a few days afterwards. By 1024, the early money changers, goldsmiths during the medieval times, gave paper money its start. One would go to a goldsmith, deposit gold into their vaults, and receive a receipt which could be traded for items. Recognizing that not many people ever demanded their gold back, they started issuing more receipts and loaning them out at interest. This gave them the control over the people by making it easy to get loans while flooding the amount of receipts in circulation. They would then make it harder to get loans, lowering the amount in circulation. They also stopped offering loans altogether, forcing people to sell their assets to the goldsmith for almost nothing to pay their loans. The first central bank was started in 1609 by money changers in Amsterdam. In 1642, money changers, anxious to take back control of the monetary system in England, which it had lost because of the king, funded Oliver Cromwell to overthrow King Charles I, who, after the takeover, is put to death. In 1760, starting the House of Rothschild, Meyer Bauer changes his name to Meyer Rothschild. He starts loaning money to governments and royalty. These loans would be backed by nations' taxes and assets. He had 5 sons and taught them the business of dealing money. A few years later, the British Parliament passes the Currency Act of 1764, which banned U.S. colonial officials from making their own money. After the American Revolution, Robert Morris opened up the first central bank in America called the Bank of North America, which continued the practice of fractional reserve banking, creating money out of thin air and charging interest on it. A little over a decade later, Rothschild sends one of his sons, Nathan, to England to open up banks. In 1807, Nathan ships gold to Spain to finance the Duke of Wellington's attack on Napoleon because he was against debt from the bankers. The U.S. had given Napoleon $3 million of gold for the Louisiana Purchase a few years before, which he used to fund his army. In 1815, Nathan sends his courier, Rothworth, to observe the Battle of Waterloo. After assessing the outcome, Rothworth notifies Nathan 24 hours before the Duke's own courier would bring the news of Napoleon's defeat. Nathan starts selling stocks like crazy, and with all eyes on him, started a selling frenzy, thinking he had gotten word that Napoleon had won. After the market nosedived, Rothschild's henchmen started buying up everything at dirt cheap prices. Once the word got back that Napoleon was defeated, Nathan had ensured to take over the Bank of England and in turn England itself. In 1862, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln ordered the printing of the greenbacks at no interest to the federal government. 3 years later, he was assassinated. In 1881, James Garfield became the 20th U.S. president. A few months after making that statement, he was assassinated. In 1908, powerful and wealthy men met in secret with international bankers on an island off the coast of Georgia called Jekyll Island to write their own banking bill to push through Congress. This was confirmed in 1935 Saturday Evening Post edition by Frank Vanderlip, who was the president of the Rockefeller National City Bank. The bill, the Federal Reserve Act, was passed and signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson, giving the money changers what they had longed for. In 1914, Rothschilds loaned Germany, France, and the British money for World War I, funding all sides. Less than 3 years later, they financed the Russian Revolution. They also funded all sides of World War II. In 1963, U.S. President Kennedy issued Executive Order Number 11110, which bypassed the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government's power to issue currency against any silver in the Treasury, debt-free. 5 months later, he was assassinated. 1981, shortly after taking office, U.S. President Reagan creates the Gold Commission. A few months later, in 1982, U.S. President Reagan's Commission on Gold reported to Congress that the U.S. Treasury owned no gold, that the gold that was left at Fort Knox was owned by the Federal Reserve as collateral against the national debt.